Hey, this is David Johnson, running back of the Arizona Cardinals, and you're listening to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the FantasyJocks.com studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Oh, my goodness. I'm back on the mic.
You escaped the trunk, I see.
You know what trunk I was in? The Rolls Royce. The Rolls Royce.
Well,
I was getting it tuned up from the inside. I'm back.
Welcome back to the show, Andy.
We're happy to have you. We got through it, but we missed you.
You know, the tweets I got and things from when I was out, which was a very strange thing. I had never missed more than one show. And I was kind of fine. Like, I was literally just sitting off in the corner.
But you could not speak.
But I could because I couldn't speak. In fact, I have a lozenge in my mouth right now.
The No Doubt song was actually written
I don't think
preemptively.
So. I'm going to keep the car analogies going. What I think happened last week, because, I mean, you had a show that went like an hour and 20 minutes.
You're welcome, everybody.
You had skipped segments. I feel like it was like I'm the driver of the car, and then the two kids in the back don't know how to drive. I pass out, and they jump in the front, and it's really, really fun, but you are swerving all over the road.
I imagine it more like a chauffeur situation where Jason and I are living the life of luxury.
You are.
In the back of the
you are.
limo while you do all the work.
My favorite tweet was, "Hey, we miss you, Andy. Those guys are crazy. They're just crazy." And so we've got a good show for you today. Oh, there's so much to talk about. There is so much to talk about from this last weekend. It was a crazy weekend. You got through about, I don't know, I remember getting about to halftime of those morning games and just kind of feeling like, where's the headlines? Like, where's the fantasy headline?
Nothing was happening.
Even when I look at the wide receiver rankings for this week, I'm looking at who finishes where, and I'm seeing not only are the names unfamiliar, but the numbers are low. There's none of these monstrous games. And obviously you had some headliners, right? Like, good friend of the show.
Oh, David Johnson?
Yeah. I gave you the shot there. David Johnson.
Woo, woo, woo.
Big game. Monster game. In fact, he's now breaking record after record.
Yeah, I saw the stat of at this point in the season, running backs who have had over 1,000 yards on the ground, and I believe it's 700 yards through the air. The list of running backs who have done that: Hall of Famer Marshall Faulk and David Johnson.
Yeah, I think Faulk's done it twice in the last 30 years, and then David Johnson. And you had some other breakouts, like the Rolls Royce. But you also had some bitter disappointments, the kind that you do not forgive as a fantasy footballer.
No, this is the kind where you write off forever and you say, I don't care what happens, Colin Kaepernick will never be on my team again.
Just unbelievable week. I couldn't believe my eyes when I looked in the second quarter and there wasn't a completed pass in the Chicago-San Francisco game.
On either side of the ball.
On either side, yeah. Okay, so what do we got on today's show? We got the rewind. We got this fantasy stud muffins. We got pooped in their big boy pants.
My favorite part.
By the way, the poop that Kaepernick did is probably what gave you crypto, Jason. It's probably what actually caused you to be sick that one week. That was as bad as it gets.
My favorite part of our doc here, because we want to point people to the fantasyfootballers.com, where we have a conglomerate, a staff writers who will just pump out amazing material. But apparently we've moved to first name basis here. We have Week 14 Studs by Keaton. Keaton. It sounds like a perfume. By
Keaton.
Yeah, careful over there.
All right, so we also have we got the Monday night preview. Big game tonight. Tons of fantasy implications tonight because you have Luck and Hilton and Marshall, Fitzpatrick and Forte, and a lot of big names that people are starting to get into the playoffs.
The amount of leagues that are watching this game tonight, because this is such an in or out week for fantasy players, and I know in all the leagues that I'm in, just crazy finishes. So many unexpected things where it's like, this has been really exciting, and it hasn't been all good this week because it's been so topsy-turvy. But what an exciting week for fantasy players going up against the playoffs and just thinking, oh, I'm in. No, wait. Oh, this just happened. It's just been back and forth.
Yeah, so we're excited to talk about all of these different things. The quick question of the day is kind of a bunch of people have sent this in. If you just got knocked out of the playoffs, Maybe Brees let you down. Kaepernick let you down. Maybe you're on the other side of a David Johnson performance or Thomas Rawls. If you just got knocked out on Sunday, this is the question from Franco and Steven. They both said, what's the first thing you should do to prepare for next season?
All right. Well, I'll say.
And then another said, what should I do to be preparing for next season? Hashtag the long bye week. Hashtag postseason prep kit.
The first thing I do, if you are in a keeper league, let's say you are only keeping 1 or 2 guys, I'm clearing the stables. If you have 0 keeper potential, I am dumping you onto the waiver wire. I'm dumping my quarterbacks. I'm dumping my kicker. I'm dumping my defense. And I am picking up guys that could become a keeper.
Paul Perkins.
Yeah, exactly.
Kenneth Dixon.
Maybe Eddie Lacy's on your waiver
Sure.
wire, and he ends up in a great situation next year. I mean, you have to look at contract situations.
Also, year-long injuries. Keenan Allen. Those
Yeah.
guys that could end up being there because somebody dropped him, they didn't have a roster spot for him, and they've forgotten.
And on top of that, so I do that for my team, but then I also make these spiteful pickups. If you're out, and I'm still working that waiver wire.
Oh, you're the worst.
I'm the guy who is. You're like, well, you're out. Why are you making waiver wires? Because I hate you. That's why I'm making waiver wire.
You are
moves.
the worst. Oh, there's nothing worse than when you're preparing and you're in that championship
I'm only
week.
bidding against 2 teams now. Yeah, except for me on the bottom.
I love this because last week Mike was mad
Yes.
at me for signing Vance McDonald when
Because
he needed
you were-
a tight end.
Yeah, but it's also a tip of the cap.
Sure. That you were mad?
Yeah.
Okay. So you respect the game.
Oh,
plan.
absolutely.
My biggest piece of advice.
Don't hate to play it.
My biggest piece of advice for those who are out is if you want to do well next year and go further next year, get in the playoffs next year, is keep watching football.
Yes.
Don't stop. Don't be like, okay, well, now I'm out of fantasy, and so I'm not going to watch this week. I'm going to take a break because as soon as you take that break, the next week.
4 weeks of production left to pay attention to.
Absolutely. And this last month changes who starts off better next year. And those players who miss the playoffs year after year after year after year, a lot of times it's because as soon as they're out, they don't watch those late season trends. So keep listening, keep watching, and you'll be good to go next year.
Weekly Rewind.
I don't want to linger too long because I'm in a good mood. So Rams signed Jeff Fisher to a 2-year extension, or better yet, they announced an extension that had apparently already taken place. I think mercifully.
It's such a bizarre situation. They were afraid to announce to the world that they had extended Jeff Fisher.
The time to do that would have been when they had a winning record at the beginning of the year. And
That's probably when it happened.
Well, but they should have announced it then.
Well, someone believes in Jeff Fisher on the Rams staff,
And Wes Snead.
so maybe they were just sitting back on. Yeah, we're gonna wait. We're gonna make the playoffs. It's gonna be great. We're gonna announce this and say, look how smart we are, and then things quickly turn for the worst.
And now they say they may let him go after the year.
yeah, they are.
So
What?
they do. They that's been talked about, the fact that they may this had already been signed, and after the season, they'll pay to let him go.
How many winning seasons does Jeff Fisher have as the Rams head coach?
That would be 0. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't had a winning season at all. He's 2 away from the all-time losingest coach. All right, we'll move on.
Moving on.
Because fantasy implications here. Although if he's there for 2 more years, beware of Todd Gurley. Panthers coach Ron Rivera has said the Cam Newton situation was a dress code violation.
It turned into a one-play benching. If that had not have been an interception, I mean, how long does that actually go?
Probably the first drive.
And
Here's how I discipline Cam Newton. I wait until he misses 1 play in like the late 3rd. That's how I'm going to start doing the 1-play bench.
Here's how I think they actually disciplined him watching that game. They kept him in until the end. I mean, you could see his face out there when they're down 40-7.
that's the Mike Tomlin
And
way.
they're making him hand the ball off every time. They're like, no. You stay in this.
Yeah,
I was
fair
like,
enough.
what is he doing out there?
Not been a good year for Cam Newton.
No.
Also been yet another, kind of cursory warning. You talk about the lessons you learn in fantasy football. We saw this with Andrew Luck a couple years ago.
Things turn over.
Huh?
I would say things turn over quickly.
They do,
in
and the
football.
leading quarterback, it's tough. It's chasing the points if you draft that guy high the next year. It really is. Because even you can even say the same thing about Brady. Say whatever you will, he still was suspended. He still missed 4 games. If you were, keeping him, you still paid the price for a guy like Brady. Julio Jones missed some time with a foot or ankle injury.
Uh-oh.
He always does, it seems. He's banged up. Pay attention to him this week. Doug Martin missed the final 3 drives of the game. You saw Jaquiz Rodgers in there because he got bent back late in the game.
Uh-oh.
People think he's okay. That's what I'm reading. But
Yeah.
there you go.
He should be, but, I mean, hopefully you're cuffing with Rodgers or Charles Sims, who should be back next week.
Lamar Miller exited the game early in the first quarter, returned later, played 47% of snaps. Thoughts on Lamar Miller?
He looked terrible. That's my whole thoughts. I mean, when you are injured and in that game and you come back and you're just trying to play through it, he played like a guy playing through an injury who was injured. Was it?
That was Thomas Rawls.
Whew.
Yeah.
11 for 103, 2 touchdowns. Left with a possible concussion late in the second. Ended up coming back in after passing the league's concussion protocol.
That's such great news. Not just because he got more points, but
No, he barely did. But
yeah, he didn't.
He
But now
looked-
we don't have to worry about
Yeah.
okay, this next week is he going to play? Is he not? We could just go off of what we saw this last game and move forward.
they're running out of running backs in Jacksonville as well as hope. Denard Robinson left with an ankle injury. He had 18 touches. Yeldon basically wasn't – they didn't want to use Yeldon with his injury. They ended up having to. Some player named Corey Grant was in the game.
Yeah. Good for you, Corey.
Kapri Bibbs left with a high ankle sprain. Adam Humphries
Pronounced with an Humphreys.
left with a concussion.
Ooh.
And they also lost Cecil Shorts, which is just sad because I like Cecil Shorts, but his career might be done. This looks like a severe knee injury for Cecil Shorts. Earl Thomas.
Oh man,
This is worth mentioning for all of you Seattle defense owners out there because, I mean, Earl Thomas is a game changer. You saw the very next play they went deep to Ted Ginn right when Thomas left the game. And it was a great play by Thomas trying to make the interception. But Cam Chancellor crashed into him, and he cracked his tibia.
Now, I will say shout out again to @ProFootballDoc. I mean, we need to get a clarification on this, or just he's done for the year, basically. But for as far as his career, the difference between a tibia and a fibula fracture is
it's
6 to 8 weeks or 6 to 8 months. So hopefully we can get some confirmation here.
Fibula is what Thomas Rawls went through at the beginning of the year where he came back.
Yes.
That was a fibula fracture. All right, and then Larry Fitzgerald, just a note here, became the youngest player to reach 1,100 catches. Jumped Chris Carter and Marvin Harrison and still getting it done.
Yep.
He's got to be the most consistent wide receiver 2 you could ever have on your team. If you pair him with like an Evans or somebody like that, it's just a great, solid week-to-week guy. They get the ball to him. You notice how many screens they threw to Larry Fitzgerald this week?
It won't because there's no one else that they want to throw the ball to.
Yeah, that's really tough there. John Brown was a gooser.
Ugh.
All right, let's talk about the good before the bad.
This week's Fantasy Stud Muffins.
Plenty of names I'm not going to say right now, but I'll mention Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco, everyone's quarterback 1 coming into the week.
Goodness gracious. 36 for 47 for 381 and 4 touchdowns. They just destroyed the Dolphins.
Dennis Pitta received 2 of those. I'm sure he'll be in this list.
Perriman.
Even Brashad Perriman was a wide receiver 1 this week.
Yeah, Carson Palmer had a great game too, 300 yards and 3 touchdowns at home against Washington. So even though he only had Larry and Gresham to throw to, it seemed like he
Big
still got it done.
Those are really the only 2.
Well, David Johnson.
No,
Yeah.
I'm saying quarterback-wise, Joe Flacco and Carson Palmer were really the only 2 true standout stud muffins.
I would
think-
count Stafford.
I was just going to
Yeah.
say, you could throw Matthew Stafford into that list, but his expectations were so high in that New Orleans game already. But he certainly had a great game, 341, 2 touchdowns, also added 22 yards on the ground.
So here's a question for you. The one thing I see out of these 2 stud muffin quarterbacks, Flacco and Palmer, is Flacco just did this against Miami, who Carson Palmer plays next week. You know, Flacco went out 36 for 47, 4 touchdowns. Palmer just had a good game. Now, would you start Palmer next week is the question.
I'm not buying into this.
For Palmer?
Yeah. The Baltimore Ravens line was spectacular. Cameron Wake was absolutely shut down as a pass rusher and one of the best pass rushers in the league. But the Baltimore Ravens offensive line was just so stout that they could not get pressure. The Arizona line is the opposite of stout. So this is not a thing where it's A plus B equals I'm starting Carson Palmer automatically.
That's good perspective. Brock Osweiler had an all right game. Who did he outscore this week, Mike?
Brock Osweiler outscored Big Ben, Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Cam Newton, Russell Wilson. The list goes on and on.
I should have played sad music in the middle of that.
Oh, my gosh. I'm just impressed that I didn't throw up while you said that.
Yeah. You kept it down.
I did.
Oh,
Running
man.
back stud muffins. There were plenty of these guys. David Johnson, Jordan Howard. 32 for 117 and 3. Jordan Howard. They just lean on him. They climb onto his back.
The defense was able to keep it close against San Francisco. It was snowing in that game, so I don't know how much that played a factor, but clearly the game stayed close enough for them to just ride Howard.
Rawls. I mean, do you expect this to continue?
It's tough, man. The schedule for him is not the best. Green Bay, Rams, Arizona, but that whole first half before he went out with the concussion, with the concussion scare, I should say, that man looked unbelievably
possessed.
Just fast, powerful, could not be tackled. He didn't look like that in the second half. Maybe he had just because he was out of game mode, possibly, but he looked unbelievably good.
Devonta Freeman had another great game. You're now talking about a guy who's put up, 5 rushing touchdowns in the last 5 games, throwing an extra receiving touchdown in that time period, really rounding into form for fantasy playoff contenders.
Yeah, he looks fantastic, and he catches the ball, which makes Freeman no matter what. So 15 for 56, that's not what you want out of your running back. But 4 for 49 through the air, so I mean he goes over 100 yards.
Yeah,
and he added 2 touchdowns.
Even in a standard format league where he's not getting all the credit for his great pass catching ability, he's the number 7 running back through week 13. Clearly, on the season, you're happy with him, and I agree. Looking forward to the playoffs, very few guys that look better than Devonta Freeman right now.
All right, I've got a question for you, gentlemen. I'm going to read you some. There's half-point scoring. All right, I'm going to read you some numbers. These are the last 6 weeks for this player. You tell me who it is. 21, 11, 33, 13, 18, and 26. It's a running back.
Those are rushing yards?
No.
Those are half-point fantasy.
Oh,
those are fantasy
my goodness.
points.
I was like, this is terrible.
You're like TJ Yeldon.
I know. I'm like, whoa, I was not with you there.
You're like Jeremy Hill. 21, 11, 33, 13, 18, 26. Monster numbers is what I'm saying. In that span, 8 rushing touchdowns in the last 6 games. Who am I talking about?
Is that Latavius?
Latavius.
That's Latavius Murray.
I love Latavius.
I originally, before this season, had him as my
you did.
fantasy MVP.
Yeah.
And I did not believe it could possibly happen after the first 4, 5, 6 weeks. Whatever's going on there, man, that team is good.
Here's the thing.
They just find a way to win games, and they're never out of it.
They were down so big, the Raiders were, and somehow they came back and smashed them in the face. But
the Buffalo Bills,
yes,
the
Buffalo Bills got out to a big lead, and they came back. I am fully convinced. I don't see another team that reminds me so much. Like the Dallas Cowboys and the Oakland Raiders are just they're mirror images to me, and I am fully convinced that if the Raiders did what the Cowboys do and decide we're going to run the ball 55% of the time and just smash them in the mouth with that O-line, they could have the leading.
You could argue that's what they've been doing. Here's his carries for the last 4 weeks, or getting towards it. 20, 12, 19, 20. So he is getting the work.
That offensive line is probably the second best in the league.
The difference between Oakland and Dallas to me is I don't think there's any way that Dallas, if they got that deficit against the Buffalo Bills, I don't think they're coming back from that. I don't think they have the offensive firepower.
Fantasy-wise, you're a Latavius owner. You need to sign Jalen Richard.
Yes.
because he had 9 carries this week, which was his career high in carries for 53 yards. He is the handcuff to own.
For sure.
I mean, DeAndre Washington was
I just dropped DeAndre Washington last week for Jalen Richard. He is the guy to own.
all right. Lev Bell had a great week. You're not sitting Lev Bell. There's no story there for fantasy owners. Here's the one. I'll give you some more honorable mentions, and then we'll talk about one more guy. Melvin Gordon played well. Terrance West had a good game. Limited work. He had touchdowns.
Sure, but
it definitely slowed the Dixon train up.
Yeah,
a lot of those guys got slowed up this week.
We thought that, Dixon last week, he had been rising in snaps, finally outsnapped Terrance West, but West it seemed to be the guy, while Dixon was more efficient on the ground. This is just a timeshare. No one's going to take over as we had hoped for the fantasy playoffs.
All right, LeSean McCoy.
The slippery fish.
17 for 130, 7 for 61 through the air. Incredible. Great. And yet still left fantasy owners wanting a little bit because Gillislee took 2 touchdowns from him.
And this was not situations where LeSean McCoy busts off a huge run and they pull him out at the 2 and they put Gillislee in for 1 play. When they got into goal line situations, Gillislee was out for multiple plays at a time. And
then did the job.
Yes. So as fantasy players, I got Shady McCoy. I'm super frustrated with this. But it is what it is, man.
But you're also happy.
I was gonna say, you poor baby.
Well, it's like those long runs. If they get in the end zone, then
I'm just saying that this is not a situation where you go, oh well, I got to hold out the hope that LeSean McCoy's the goal line back.
No, he's not the goal line back, but he's gonna be fine. You start him every week.
Before we get into wide receivers and then the Raising Cane's Rising Stars of the Week, we do want to thank today's sponsor, SeatGeek. You know SeatGeek. You love SeatGeek. They are the smartest, easiest way to find tickets for the football games you want to see up close in person. That includes all these upcoming playoff matchups. I mean, there is nothing quite like being at one of those games. I still remember being at one of those Kurt Warner, Aaron Rodgers, that 50-45, whatever it was, first-round playoff game. Absolutely incredible. My son, he turns 8 years old on December 13th. His one big gift that he wanted was to go to a game. He's never been to a Cardinal game. He's going with me. I got the tickets on SeatGeek in about 2 seconds. Grab the app. Grab some Saints Cardinal tickets for the 18th. Done. He is jacked up. He's excited. Best of all of our listeners get a $20 rebate off the first SeatGeek purchase. To get your $20 rebate on tickets, download the free SeatGeek app. Go to the settings tab, click the add a promo code, enter the promo code footballers, and SeatGeek's going to send you $20 after you made your first ticket purchase. So download the free SeatGeek app, enter the promo code footballers today.
We will also want to thank Texture, the sponsor of today's show. Texture, look, it's the holidays. You're traveling. We can only put out so many podcasts, people, while you're on the airplanes. And after that, you're probably going to want to pick up some magazines. But it's the modern day. I don't want to lug around a binder full of magazines weighing me down. And Texture's solving that problem, giving us access to over 200 magazines. Texture's gone beyond delivering just the magazine itself. They make it easy to find and enjoy articles you want to read, daily recommendations, exclusive interactive features. It's searchable. Mark what you like. Check out back issues. There's bonus videos. Texture is doing work, people. Doing work if you like magazines. And why would you subscribe to just a couple magazines when you could have all the best ones on your smartphone, your tablet for way less? Sports Illustrated, CNET, Popular Science. The list is massive. And right now, Texture is offering the Foot Clan a 14-day free trial when you go to texture.com/footballers. That's 14 days to try Texture for free when you go to texture.com/footballers.
They got all the great magazines.
All of them.
All right, we're going to talk about stud muffins at the wide receiver position. It's all the names you didn't think we'd say out loud.
Oh, man.
There's a few of the expected, right? Beckham and Bryant, and good game from Crabtree, Jordy Nelson. But then there's the Golden Tate and Tyler Lockett and Albert Wilson and Brandon LaFell.
Ted Ginn Jr.
Freaking Ted Ginn Jr. After I pumped the brakes on him, he said, you know what? First I'm going to take out Earl Thomas, and then I'm going to make you look dumb.
The best part of...
And that arm by Cam Newton, holy moly.
Yes.
He threw it 300 yards. I did the math.
It looped around the earth.
Right. It was
and then
incredible.
into Ted Ginn's hands. The best part of the broadcast for Ted Ginn, Chris Collinsworth finally starts to commend Ted Ginn for rounding into form as a wide receiver on a drop.
Yeah.
The next play, Ted Ginn drop. And you're like, oh.
Hey, you get
Ted
the good
Ginn
with
is-
the bad with Ted Ginn.
Yes.
You get the wheels, and then you get the drops.
The wheels, the deals, the steals, and the peels.
You had a couple guys that have been disappointing over the last several weeks that also stepped up a little bit. You had DeAndre Hopkins finally get a touchdown.
Oh, my goodness.
That was glorious. He still was only
It
3.
wasn't glorious. Everybody had him on their bench.
No, no. There are plenty of people that still started DeAndre Hopkins. Even questions I was fielding this last week.
Not my opponent.
There were still questions I was fielding this last week. This guy or Hopkins, and you reluctantly still answer Hopkins because he has that opportunity, but he was still only 3 for 58. Jarvis Landry
Finally.
got back in the PPR column with 11 receptions for 87 yards. So those two guys came back to life. Who do you trust more out of those two guys going forward?
Hopkins or Landry?
I'll go with Landry.
Yeah.
I'll go with Landry. I mean, they were getting boat race. So obviously they were throwing the ball the whole game. Their winning streak just stopped, and I was kind of amazed how the announcer seemed to turn on Tannehill despite the winning streak, right? Like you won 6 straight games, and it was like maybe it's time for him to be benched. And I'm just like, wow, that's quick.
We're savage. as
Quarterbacks,
fans.
man.
Yeah.
I trust Landry, though.
Yeah, I would as well. Like we said.
Do you think he'll get Patrick Peterson next week? Or will
I do.
Peterson be on Parker?
No, I think Peterson will
I assume he'll be
move.
on Landry.
Well, then maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe you slow down because DeAndre Hopkins at least gets
the
Indianapolis.
Colts.
Yeah. I'd probably go Hopkins then for
Yeah,
next week.
I agree.
But yeah, Julio had a big game. Brown had a big game. What about these names that broke out of nowhere? Is there anybody that you're looking at and saying, yeah, I guess we're going to talk about Golden Tate.
Yep. We'll talk about him in
So
just a second.
Jason has a lot of thoughts on Golden Tate we're going to talk about.
And hey, Tyler Lockett, there's the guy I drafted.
Yeah, there's the speed.
Held on to for 4-5 weeks. Finally had to drop him and move on. But he's healthy. Russell Wilson looks healthy. And this could be big things moving forward for Tyler Lockett.
Brandon LaFell play. You know what? One thing I'm gonna stay on Lockett for 1 second. You know what helps Lockett too? It's not just. I mean, his speed is back, and you see it even on the kick returns. It's what made him great last year was Russell Wilson getting out of the pocket. He can escape, and Lockett has this like ability to be a great wide receiver and find an open space in the defense when the play breaks down.
Yeah, I mean, I had Russell Wilson as my start of the week this last week, almost fully because what we saw the game before against Tampa was that he's mobile, he's back, and so going home, obviously he was still okay. I think he finishes quarterback 11.
Because Thomas Rawls was doing everything for the first half.
Yeah, but I mean, you could see they would get a pass rush through, and it's like, oh, Russell's going down, and then he does that patented the spin move that is always annoying as a
How do you
Cardinal
not see
fan.
that coming?
I know. You need to run at him, and before he makes that move, just juke to the right because he's coming back.
Do they watch tape?
He
does the same thing.
One-on-one, it's impossible to stop that.
I suppose.
It's momentum. I know we're going to get into the waivers on tomorrow's show, but Brandon LaFell, 5 for 95 and 1, has Cleveland and Pittsburgh coming up on the schedule. Do you buy into Brandon LaFell's good game?
He's done this a few times. I don't know that he can be consistent, but wide receiver 3, if you are struggling there and you want to pick up a guy, I'm okay with that.
Tight ends that stud muffins this week: Pitta, Ladarius Green, Zach Ertz had a good game.
15 targets.
Yeah,
that's
Travis
outrageous.
Kelce.
They were trailing.
It wasn't just trailing for Ertz either. It was, Jordan Matthews was out of the game.
Yeah.
Like before when we heard that, I moved Ertz up in my rankings because there's only so many targets there.
Yeah, and the headliner to me, Ladarius Green, 6 for 110.
Career high.
With a hose down, 11 targets. The Steelers need desperately another pass-catching weapon. Sammy Coates can't do it because he's banged up. Eli Rogers is a limited player. Ladarius Green's the guy they paid. They paid some serious quiche to have him come be that weapon. And it looks like he is emerging at just the right time, especially for fantasy players when all the tight ends, it seems, besides Travis Kelce, Travis Kelce's the kind of the best option right now. Ladarius Green is a guy who I think is an absolute must pick up, and he's probably at the top of my waiver list.
I would say I'd spend the most money on Ladarius Green than just about anybody.
Yeah.
Because he could be a difference maker in your playoffs. with a playoffs that doesn't have Rob Gronkowski, that might not have a healthy Jordan Reed. I don't buy into Pitta repeating what he did.
No, that was no.
Brait had a good game. Graham had a good game. And then Fleener had a good game, and Josh Hill might be out, so he may see some more snaps. Those are guys to pay attention to for sure.
Fleener definitely padded his numbers there at the end of the game as they were doing a garbage drive.
All right, let's talk about a couple more of these names in our Raising Cane's segment.
Raising Cane's Rising Stars of the Week.
Now, we had some tweets from people that were enjoying a Raising Cane's tailgate while they watched the games this week.
And you know what? You are the best and the worst at the exact same time because
You make you jealous.
I was not eating Cane's at that particular moment. And
It's a bad tweet to get.
Yeah.
We do troll each other with Cane's. I noticed that. Like, I'll be in the drive-thru. I'll be like, I'll take a little selfie of me by the sign. I'll be like, hey, Mike, how you doing? All right. This might be is this the first time we've had back-to-back the same name in the Rising Stars?
This is
the same. This is the first time we've had the same name for the same person back to back.
Yes.
I believe we've like paired
Right.
Melvin Gordon.
Mike is just leaving it with what he had last week.
Hey, it worked out. Malcolm Mitchell, wide receiver for the New England Patriots, 84% of Patriots plays. Look, 10 targets, 8 for 82. No Gronk. Amendola tweaked his ankle. He was my rising star last week because he had an opportunity. Or was it last week or was it a couple weeks ago? But Chris Hogan was out. We saw the opportunity for Mitchell, and he came through. Tom Brady loves him. And then it was, you got to pick him up, but just you got to be patient with him because Chris Hogan was still the guy. Malcolm Mitchell,
You start him.
he stole Chris Hogan's lunch money.
You know that Danny Amendola's out now, right?
That's why
that's
I said Amendola tweaked his ankle.
Okay, sorry.
So there's targets that
High
have
ankle
to go around. And Julian Edelman, I think it might have been because of the matchup, but they actually limited him on snaps as well, and they were going to Malcolm Mitchell. He's a guy who down the stretch could pay big dividends. The comparison is immediately to Brandon LaFell, who you saw as the number 2 wide receiver in that role a couple years ago and be highly, highly productive, especially now with Gronk. With
comparison
Gronk out, they got to throw the ball to someone, and Mitchell's good.
The comparison that I can make as well, not just so going back on the Patriots, but you could almost say very similar to Michael Thomas. You have a talented rookie who has a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Right.
He can get
Nice
it done
combo.
in fantasy.
Combo. I agree. I'm going to go with
The box combo.
the box combo. I'm going to go with Spencer Ware. This is more of a piggyback on. Look, we said positive regression was coming with Spencer Ware.
There was a lot of Ware questions yesterday of why do you keep liking Spencer Ware?
Because you watch football and you see how many snaps he's in on the field. Look, he had a great game. You remember when he played Denver a couple weeks ago, because I think he has Denver in like 2 weeks. He grinded out nearly 100 total yards against Denver's defense. He finally got into the end zone a couple times this past week, and man alive, did Alex Smith miss him on what would have been about a 60-yard passing touchdown, wide open down the sideline. Just barely missed him. And I just think what you're seeing from Ware with the workload, something you can lean on. It might not be fair to throw him in the Rising Stars, but I think it is because the positive regression will continue with Ware. I think he's good for those touchdown opportunities, and he's the best guy in that backfield right now, and they need him.
With Ware and Pitta, Brandon LaFell, I mean, it was positive regression Sunday for a lot of guys.
And it was the opposite for some of these guys, Taylor Gabriel, Kenneth Dixon.
Yeah.
If it's hard for a guy like Julio Jones to have a great week every single week, which, by the way, he has like 4 single-digit weeks, you're not going to get a guy like Taylor Gabriel giving it to you every single week. So maybe tomorrow we'll have the chance to talk more about some of those negative guys and in the poop segment, because just because a guy like Taylor Gabriel has a lower week does not mean you necessarily throw them out, right?
Right.
So but some guys you may. So Jason, who are you going with?
I'm going with a guy who was thrown out of almost all teams early in the season. A guy that I really liked going into draft season.
Blake Bortles?
No, don't you put that evil on me. No, Golden Tate, the number 1 wide receiver this past week so far, with Monday not concluded yet. But Golden Tate has really shown that coming into this season, I liked him because he had such a good rapport with Matthew Stafford, and he's had, basically back-to-back years with almost 100 receptions. He was going to be the guy, but maybe it was Marvin Jones. Well, Marvin Jones took over those first 5 weeks of the season, And so Golden Tate was thrown in the garbage can. Get rid of those first 5 weeks, okay? Because that was a long time ago now. We're in week 13. Where do you think Golden Tate ranks from week 6 all the way back in week 6 on to now?
Ooh, that's a good
It's a
question.
great question.
I'm going to go wide receiver 14.
I'm going to go 12.
You nailed it. He
12?
is wide receiver 12. He is a wide receiver 1 for the last 2 months, and he's been playing well.
But everybody's angry with him.
Because of the first. And so
Yeah.
I'm saying, hey, look, you got to give the guy the due. Plus, Marvin Jones, obviously, he missed this last game. We don't know his health for next game.
The Mountain Dew? You give him the Mountain Dew?
He is definitely good enough to be started at this point.
All right. Those were the Raising Cane's Rising Stars of the Week. Don't forget, it's holiday season. You can feed your holiday party with a Raising Cane's tailgate this year. Their 24-hour marinated, cooked-to-order chicken fingers will make anyone have, listen to this, a holly and jolly holiday.
No doubt.
Right.
You want to be a hero at your office?
Don't forget to pick up the Raising Cane's gift cards, too. They're perfect holiday gifts. You can get a $25 gift card, get a $5 bonus, and then give the gift of chicken. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. All right, guys, time to move on.
Pooped in his big boy pants.
There's one thing that Drew Brees is very thankful for yesterday.
Colin Kaepernick?
Colin Kaepernick, because Colin Kaepernick is burying the lead of Drew Brees.
Drew Brees had a Drew Brees game. If you look at this line, 31 for 44, 326 and 3. That sounds like Drew Brees had a great game. Except it wasn't 3 touchdowns. It was 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions.
It's like we say, when Drew Brees is at home and gets in a positive game script, you gotta bench him.
I mean, this was
honestly,
all jokes
you're right,
aside.
Mike. Yeah, he's the lead.
Yes.
Colin Kaepernick's not the lead. Drew Brees' team was down at the Superdome against a horrible defense.
What happened?
And you know what happened?
Well,
the stars of sadness aligned.
I will say
that's what happened. That will never happen again.
First, I think it's time we stop calling the Lions a horrible defense. These guys are division leaders getting into the playoffs.
You're right. No, you're right.
But even if it's a good defense,
let's call them a vulnerable defense.
That's fair.
In the secondary, especially when all defenses are vulnerable against the Saints at home.
Yes.
So Brees let you down, and he let you down in a big way. And I tweeted this last week in our scoring format, which is half-point league, 6 point per touchdown. These two guys combined for 86.3 points last week.
86.
Both over 40, Kaepernick and Brees. This week, they combined for about 10 points total. And here's a hint. 8 of it was Brees. Okay? Kaepernick, 1 for 5.
Wow.
For 4 yards.
This was
the worst poop in the pants I've ever experienced with a guy that just put up a 45-point week.
We had Brandon Cooks with possibly the poopiest pants of the year award.
No, not anymore.
With the almost 50 points and 0 targets. Colin Kaepernick was sacked more times. There was a higher sack total than he had passing yards.
It's unbelievable.
5 sacks, 4 passing
And
yards.
look, people, a couple people tweet and say, "Oh, I hope this is an anomaly." Yeah, with Brees, it's an anomaly. With Kaepernick, here's the problem, and I'm not overreacting to say this. When you get pulled and you're benched, it changes the entire equation. We said we love the playoff schedule. We all know, and you can go look back at the previous 6-7 weeks and how great he was for fantasy owners.
Yeah, he's the number 7 quarterback.
But none of that matters anymore because once you're benched like that, the confidence level you have in that playoff schedule is gone. I would be finding you want to go into the playoffs with Winston and Cap? No, let Cap. I'd get somebody else because if you're streaming 2 quarterbacks in the playoffs, I don't want Cap to be the other one because this is too frightening.
Well, you're also at a position, I think the scariest part of that is not knowing what the coach will think should he have a bad first half. Because
that's what I mean.
In general, you got, okay, he had a bad first half. So many people have terrible first halves, especially at quarterback, and because of that, they got to throw the ball a bunch of the second half. They come back, have a fine fantasy game. But now you could just see him, okay, he goes in, he's the starter, struggles for a half, and he gets pulled again. Doesn't get the chance to be fantasy relevant.
If he had played the whole game, we could have all been like, well, 7 straight good weeks plus the snow and the game script, and okay, he's going to start next week. But now you don't even know. We don't know who's starting. So stay away from him. If you want, print a picture out, throw some darts at it, do whatever you need to do to get over this.
He could still
Hopefully you could survive.
He could still have big fantasy games, but his risk factor is now through the charts.
Well, and you had some other poopers this week. We don't want to forget about him. Dak Prescott had probably his worst fantasy game in a while. He lost a fumble. He only had 1 touchdown. Cam Newton stunk. Alex Smith, I don't know if he didn't completely poop his pants, but his pants aren't that big. So, Tyrod Taylor, Cam Newton.
Yeah, Cam Newton certainly did.
Every week we take a look. Is Cam Newton better than streaming?
No,
he's not. All right, running backs, guys.
Yeah.
We need the narratives here. James Starks, I think he played something like 12% of snaps.
Well, he got pulled really early. I don't know what happened, but he
looked terrible. There was a particular play where it was 3rd and short, and if he had just gone north-south, it was an easy first down. Instead, James Starks decides he's going to run laterally towards the end, the side of the field, and then gets stopped.
Sometimes those eye roll moments, for a coach, that's it for that game. So does that mean you buy into?
He did come in, and he had a decent spark moving forward, but we could be back on Ty Montgomery watch.
I agree here.
Everyone's favorite backup.
Everybody's favorite running back, wide receiver.
This is a week to watch. I mean, moving forward, you're not going to, since there's no clarity between James Starks, Ty Montgomery, Christian Michael. Oh, and they play Seattle?
No, thank you.
So let's just go ahead and
Let's
avoid
pass.
Green Bay for this week.
I'm going to give you some more pooper running backs. You tell me whether you're worried about them long term or not. Jonathan Stewart.
No.
Got San Diego, Washington, Atlanta.
The schedule is much more favorable.
All right. What about Lamar Miller and the injury? He has a nice schedule with Indy, Jacksonville, Cincinnati, but
you just got to monitor. I'm not extremely worried here unless he is missing entirely Thursday's practice. I expect he'll miss Wednesday. He'll be limited Thursday, and then I'm fine with him.
Another stinker for the stinker. Todd Gurley, 11 for 38. Does he bounce back next week against Atlanta?
Can the Rams keep the other offense under control so that you can use Todd Gurley?
I think they'll have an easier time with Atlanta than they will with Bill Belichick. Even though Atlanta's been a great offense, I still think Atlanta and then 2 weeks after that, San Francisco, Todd Gurley, you're probably going to play him even in the playoffs.
Rob Kelly against Arizona was only 14 for 63, but I actually thought he played well.
I thought that's fine.
So I think I'm confident in him against Philly, Carolina coming up.
He did miss oh my goodness.
What?
He can't catch.
Oh.
The dude can't catch.
He can barely take a pitch out of the backfield.
He had one of those
he is the new Alfred Morris.
Yeah, they were down on the 1 yard line. It was like 1st and 2 at the goal, and they run a boot to the right, and Rob Kelly just leaks out into the end zone and is wide open. It was just pitch and catch.
He looked inept.
And he threw the ball, and it's just like boink.
Lucky for him, that drop is removed from the stat sheet because I believe there was a
was
penalty on the play.
Do you think Washington just looks for these guys that are like, we don't want them to be able to catch. We want them to really focus between the tackles.
Maybe. But there was a situation where Washington was on the half-yard line. Cousins snuck one in. With the QB sneaker. If Rob Kelly had run that in, it would have been a great fantasy day.
No, I thought he looked good against a very tough Arizona front.
I agree.
Ingram and Hightower combo.
Ingram was the toe injury. He
came back in.
But he looked fantastic to start the game, then hobbled off. He missed some time. It's a toe problem. So it's more not a Mark Ingram problem.
He also had a bad game script there with New Orleans down and not able to do anything with Brees.
And Cadet led the team in snaps.
Yeah, because of I think it was
so
game
Tampa
script.
Next week. Who do you start? Ingram.
It's still Ingram for me.
Another combo that let you down. James White and Deion Lewis doing nothing for fantasy owners. Is this what we're going to see the rest of the season? This was the worry.
Yeah.
This was the worry when Lewis came back, is that he would take away any value from White, but not do enough on his own to make you start him.
And that's what you're seeing.
And then, of course, you cannot forget the featured running back for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah. You mean the report that Wendell Smallwood would be featured?
Yep.
Yeah, you stay away from that. Stay away from that.
Juju. It's funny because we joke all the time about whatever Doug Peterson says, you do the opposite.
It's not a joke anymore.
We joke, and every time we say it, it's still a joke. But not all jokes are lies. It's actually the truth. every single thing he has said for the last 8 weeks, he has done the opposite. And I think at this point, I mean, we were on our Slack channel, and you pointed that out, and I'm like, whoa, I got to move Sproles up.
Do you
and it wasn't a joke.
If you're featuring a guy, do you give him the ball on the goal line?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that didn't happen. All right, wide receiver sinkers. The great Davante Adams payback after he destroyed Jason's dreams last week.
Hey, I pumped the brakes on
You did.
Davante
1
Adams.
for 17 for Adams, and now has Seattle. So that's
You had a full-on
that was part of why
voodoo
you
doll.
pumped him too. You pumped him because he has
The
Seattle coming
schedule
up.
and the lack of targets.
And the voodoo doll that
All
you
right.
created.
Who are you worried about? Davante Adams. These are stinkers. These are poopers. Benjamin, Evans, Robinson, Sanders, and Beasley.
I'm worried about basically 4/5 of those. I'm not worried about Mike Evans at all.
Zero concerns for me.
He's been great. He's got the targets. He's got
Double New Orleans.
2 out of the next 3
Oh,
weeks.
New Orleans, man.
But when it comes to Davante Adams, Calvin Benjamin, Allen Robinson, and Emmanuel Sanders, I'm worried a little bit about all of those guys because, look, Cam isn't getting it done for Kelvin. The quarterback situation for the Broncos is terrible.
Bortles.
Bortles is the worst. So I guess the guy I would trust the most out of those 4 would be Davante Adams because he can be efficient, still get it done. But I pumped the brakes for a reason. Not the best schedule coming up. So I don't really love any of those guys.
As long as Simeon is the quarterback and it's not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers mascot throwing the ball to Emmanuel Sanders, then I'm still okay playing him.
Now, I got my blood tested this week when I was out, and I did not have the Beasles.
Yeah.
And neither did he.
Nope. Only 2 for 23. But, I mean, this isn't – I'm not concerned about Beasley, but
It was Dak's worst game of the year.
He is who he is. He's a 5 for 50 guy with upside every week.
All right, before we get into the Monday night game, and we're going to talk about some more of these guys tomorrow, so I know we might not be focusing. Willie Snead had a bad game. We'll talk about some of these guys. Tight ends, though, Greg Olsen. I mean, what do you do at this point? What are we seeing happen there? Is this all Cam-related? Because it seems like it is. But Olsen, 3 for 30. You're locking him into your lineup every week, and he's letting you down.
He is.
I mean, would you start
truly,
Ladarius Green now?
Yes, I think I would. He is truly destroying fantasy teams. I mean, he's a guy that is an automatic start at the position and has been for the last 7 weeks. You've had a hard time.
Last couple of years.
You've had a hard. No, I'm saying for the last 7 weeks, you've had a hard time winning your matchups because you have a deficit coming at your tight end position. And I think the time has come now where if you have a good option, which I think Ladarius Green is a good option, then you look at the matchup and you stream. You make the best choice you can.
San Diego, Washington, Atlanta don't worry me, but Cam Newton worries me. So that's the tough thing about Olsen. Like, I don't want to chase points at tight end, but Olsen hasn't done it in so long that maybe it's not chasing me anymore.
This reminds me of there was a few years back during the Peyton Manning era where Peyton Manning had a bad game and he was in this section. He thought, oh, well, it's Peyton Manning. He was in the section the next week. You're like, oh, it's Peyton Manning. He just kept ending up in that section.
Last year?
It might. I feel like it was a couple years ago.
With the knee injury at the end of the year.
There was this
2 years
stretch
ago.
where it was, but it's Peyton Manning, so you got to keep playing him. But it's just that you're in an impossible situation where, as a fantasy player, if you move away from your superstar and that superstar returns to what they normally are on your bench, I mean, how do you live with yourself in that situation?
The way that you live with yourself is that you make a good other decision. You start someone that's competent. Because if Greg Olsen goes off for 25 on my bench, but I got 12 out of my tight end, I'm not going to be that upset. I'm going to be upset if I started a guy that got me 2 points while Greg Olsen went off on my bench. So look for those guys. We'll talk about it on tomorrow's waiver show. The Ladarius Greens and guys like that can get it done.
All right, Monday night game, Colts take on the Jets. The Jets are 2-point dogs at home, 49-point over-under. Lots of fantasy implications, including
Moncrief.
Dante Moncrief. You counting on him tonight with the Hilton coming off his injury, but, Moncrief should be good against New York, shouldn't he?
Moncrief should be locked in for 50 and a touchdown because that seems to be his
50
line.
catches?
Yes,
No,
50 yards and a touchdown. That's Moncrief. And I got to jump in here because we have this platform. Mr. T.Y. Hilton I need
because we have this platform. I feel like you get special rights to his fantasy production.
Hilton, buddy. I paid a lot for you.
Call him Ty. He likes Ty.
I paid a lot for my future for this season because I looked at you and I said this guy is something special. There's some magic happening here with T.Y. Hilton. I need 20 points tonight.
You need a Monday night miracle?
I need Monday miracle.
So now the Foot Clan can root for you?
Yes.
So this gets you a bye week if he gets
Yes. Yeah, the good news is I'm still in the playoffs, but that bye week is so delightful.
Oh, well, yeah, it saves you a week of mental struggles.
Of torment.
Yeah, of torment.
Why do we do this?
This is ridiculous. This game is ridiculous.
Like the fantasy playoffs, you get in.
You want to know why?
I'm consumed all week
Yeah.
by thinking of Sunday.
Here's why we do this. We have tonight's Monday night game has implications across the board, from playoff implications to, in our league, we have some of the last place teams, like the last place team in our league. They spin the wheel of water 12 times. They get soaked in water, and then they draft wet.
And that's going to come down to Matt Forte
It's going to come down to Matt Forte and Andrew Luck, and 3 different owners might end up getting watered. It's going to be hilarious. Brandon Marshall, what does he offer you tonight?
I think Brandon Marshall has a good game. Fitzpatrick,
Even though he hadn't practiced.
Yeah, I mean, he's a gamer, and it could be Quincy Enunwa who steps up, but I still do expect. I moved Brandon Marshall down to my rankings. He was up at I think like 6. I moved him down to about 13, but I still think he has a decent fantasy game. I don't expect a monster game. I do think Fitzpatrick at home, coming off of a decent week last week, I expect him to have a better game than even Drew Brees this week.
Yeah, that's amazing. Amazing praise. So tonight's game, Fitzpatrick has this NFL ranked 31st ranked passer rating, but had a good week last week. Colts defense has been giving it up, so it should be, to me, this is a fantasy, maybe a makeup for a lot of this bad performance. Bad performance.
Please, just 50 to 49 by the end of the game.
You know who was not tormented this past week? 2 teams, the Browns and the Titans, who didn't play any part in this fantasy madness. Now being reported Robert Griffin should be starting next week. What does that do to Pryor?
Oh no. I don't know.
I don't think it hurts Pryor. I think you're going to see Pryor run 3 or 4 9 routes, and honestly, for all of Robert Griffin's downside, the one thing that he is I feel excellent on is he can have really good placement on a deep throw.
Yeah, his deep ball is nice.
There's probably a podcast out there called Robert Griffin III's Downside, and then every week it's probably a 5-day-a-week show. All right. That's it. Hey, if you have a question for the show, we're answering more of them on the show this week. Send them into the mailbag. Go to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. Click the Submit a Question button. 302-464-TFFB is the voicemail hotline. You can call in a question as well. We'll get those into the show. Hopefully you survived some of the bad performances this week. You know, maybe you were in the boat of, Drew Brees, but you played Colin Kaepernick. Or one of these other, Matt Ryan. I know led a lot of people down this week. So hopefully you're still alive and you're still surviving. If not, keep it right here. We're a year-round show. We're going to get you ready for next season. We're going to get you ready for the playoffs.
You know what's also,
we will not let you down.
You know what's coming up? I mean, we're still a couple weeks away. The Footies.
Oh, yeah.
The awards show, the Footies.
4 weeks away, yeah.
But it's still.
Give away some end-of-season awards. Start looking to next season. It's going to be fun. Keep it right here, full-time, all the time.
Check out fantasyjocks.com. Promo code is footballers.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.